Unsyndicated presents Off the Air with Sean Baligian.
So what is up? Just like old times. This is funny. It's so nice to see my little booster's face. I'm going to introduce my little booster in just a second. And of course, Blake's here as well from Mitch Album Show and Sports Rap on 760 WJR. Yep. But obviously, this is a special show that we're doing tonight. We are a mere 30 days away. And in case you missed it, our friends with the Detroit Sports Commission and, of course, Visit Detroit had a presser today. And it's so vitally important for you to follow along with some of the stuff that they're doing, the know before you go type of thing. Because I've been consistent with this as somebody who has been to a draft, and I know Booster's been to a few. I don't think people understand the horde that is coming to Detroit. I still think 30 days out, Blake, as much as you and I have talked about it, I still think the average human doesn't understand that hundreds of thousands of people are going to be descending upon Detroit. So you might want to get on the right page. Go to visitdetroit.com. They've got a know before you go. We'll be talking about a lot of things during the course of the show. But this is a guy I've done things with for many, many years. I am going to, for a moment, pat ourselves on the back. At one point in time, we were actually named, what was it, Scott? The top 5 fantasy football shows by Sports Illustrated. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
Isn't that unbelievable?
That's crazy.
That's incredible when you think about it. Yep. So we were doing fantasy football shows, and then we did a lot of stuff with my former employee, Blake, my former employer.
Yeah, I still work there, Sean. So let's be nice, okay?
I'm not saying, dude.
No. I'm just,
You know me. I'm not saying, I mean, other than I got fired.
Yeah, and you forgot to turn your lights on again.
Lights on,
Yeah.
Oh, look at Mario. Mario said, I miss Geekly. Do you remember Mario and Drago? They would always come into Geekly.
I do.
That was a fun show. But Scott Bischoff, of course, has been with me for many, many years, and certainly he's made a great name for himself. He's helped us out in so many different endeavors, including Lions Radio. We would do the draft shows. We would do podcasts for Lions Radio as well. And he kindly joins us. If you are not familiar with Scott, follow him on Twitter at Bischoff _Scott. He's with Detroit Lions podcast.com, footballguys.com. Hi, Booster. How are you?
I'm good, man. It's been a while. I'm happy to join you guys. It's good to see your face. What have you been doing? You too, Blake. Sorry.
Well,
you're good.
I got fired a few months ago. So
I heard all about that.
No, you know what? Come on. I'd like to make Blake gets
why?
Why did Blake fire you? Because it's clearly Blake's fault.
I don't know why Blake fired me. I've been nothing but nice to the guy. Give him barbecue, give him like giant trays of barbecue he leaves my house with, and the guy cans me. And I
almost cried the day he got fired, but we'll just ignore that. Yeah.
Hey, listen, it's the business.
Whatever.
Like, all jokes aside, it's the business. Whatever. I wish everybody the best. No, Scott, getting fired up for this, and we figured who better to talk to on a night like this. And we can't thank our friends with Visit Detroit and Detroit Sports Commission enough for having us do these types of things. But who better to talk to than Scott Bischoff? And Scott, I'm going to start right there. I've consistently been saying for literally 2 months now, the average person, and I think even a lot of the people who are sports fans like us, I don't think they understand the enormity of the circus that is going to be descending upon Detroit.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to them in New York. I was in Chicago. I was in Nashville. I know everybody wants to get down there, but I don't know that it's going to be plausible for a lot of people to get down there. It's going to be mayhem. and I don't know what the plans are. I think there's some Hart Plaza stuff going on and Campus Martius, but I don't know where they're going to actually be drafting from. I don't know where people are going to park. I mean, it's one of those things where I think everybody's going to have to just kind of wait and see what the plans are. But I know they're going to pull it off. It's going to be awesome. But Sean, you're right. I mean, it's going to be a spectacle. There are going to be people everywhere. It's going to be great for the city. It's a great draft. It's a great class. So it'll be fun. It's going to be very fun.
Make sure if you're looking for some of the information that Scott is talking about, go to visitdetroit.com. 2024 NFL draft. And most importantly, we're going to keep hammering this. Everybody needs to download the NFL One Pass app for access to the free draft viewing areas. Scott, it's amazing that you say that because, right now the NFL draft feeder is beginning to rise. It is going to be in front of Campus Martius, but that's only going to be a central hub. And there are going to be so many people there, but there are going to be other areas where people can be a part of this. And that's what's going to be cool. I always envisioned what this might look like. And I'm still having a tough time formulating it in my head, but I think we've all been to the Lion games. And Blake, you and I went to the Monday night game when our pal Lomas got inducted into the Den. That giant stretch of road, really from, Brush Park, all the way down to Ford Field. It's just one massive humanity going in. You've got to multiply that many, many times because there are going to be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people here.
And the other factor too is, and I hope this is a factor, the Red Wings might be playing playoff games, possibly.
Could you imagine that?
Tonight's a big night. But they could be playing a home playoff game or two during the draft. You don't know what the schedule looks like, but there's going to be a lot happening. The Nashville one was really cool because they set it up outside too. There was a lot to do. Are you guys going to run 40s down there? If they set that up, you're going to run a 40?
Absolutely not. I'll leave my
Can you imagine?
Absolutely not. I'll leave my hamstring somewhere on the sidewalk, and I don't need that. It's been a tough road for my knee and my hamstring, but we're finally getting back to where I was about 10 years ago.
Are you 40 free? Blake, are you 40 free? No 40s for you?
Run a 40? Come on. I don't want to break any records. That's the only issue.
No, boy.
You seem like more of a short area quickness kind of a guy than a 40 guy.
Yeah, that's, you know what? Yeah, give me a 3-cone. I could knock that out of the park.
Good luck.
Let's get right to it though, Scott. The top of the draft once again. I every time I talk to you, I kind of chuckle because you and I have been talking about this for years. It's fun to look at the mock drafts in January. I think it's more fun to look at them as we get closer to the draft and see how wrong they are. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. In particular about JJ McCarthy. That was a guy I saw, late first round, early second round, and I was going, have ye learned nothing? But this is going to be a quarterback heavy top of the draft again. I know we talked about this on the show last night with our buddy Jeff Husak, but I would be remiss if I didn't start right there because it is the top of the draft. How do you see those four guys panning out? Is there an order for you, or is it more, well, this guy might fit that, this guy might fit that? How do you see those four names, panning out at the top of the draft?
It's a great question, and it's literally, are we going to see the first four picks be quarterbacks? I don't think so, but we could. I think it's at this point, Caleb Williams is going to be the first pick. He would scare me as far as his game scares me because he does not like to play inside the structure of an offense. He likes to freelance a touch. I'm not saying he can't operate within the structure, but his preference is to kind of put on the Superman cape. And that is and has been a problem for quarterbacks in the past. He is ridiculously talented the way he throws the ball. We'll see. I mean, he gives me a little pause just because of some of that stuff where hey, you guys, you designed a screen and the running back is wide open. And it might be a 15, 20-yard gain if you pitched him the ball, threw him the ball, but he'll turn it down and roll out the other way and then try to force something farther downfield or just make the offense tougher. And that's tough. Like you have to be a specific kind of coordinator to take that, to to go into the film room the next day and say, why did we set up this play and it's right there for us. Why did you turn that down? So he does that kind of stuff. And then the opposite of that is JJ McCarthy. So there's the problem. So McCarthy can do all that stuff outside structure. He's very mobile. He's accurate. He's all that stuff. But when you look at like a player's mental makeup and their process and all that stuff, McCarthy, to me, of all these guys, is the player who I would trust the most. I'm not saying he should be the first pick, but he's the player I would trust the most to be able to get you through the hard times that are coming for your offense and as a player. I think there are a couple of throws to me that are highlight throws for him. When you look at the against Michigan State, the throw to Colston Loveland in the middle of the field was just a ridiculous throw.
You could have brought up 100 different throws, and you have to bring that throw up.
It's just a ridiculous throw, and the story behind it. He spotted this in film session. He recognized that linebacker turns at a certain point in routes, and he recognized it. So he asked them, "Hey, let's take advantage of that." And then you make that throw, and then he makes the exact same throw against Ohio State to Roman Wilson. Same middle of the field, ridiculous throw. It's about an inch away from the defender's helmet into double coverage. And then you see him roll out and make throws, on the move. And he's a really good athlete, all that stuff. I would trust him. I would expect him at this point. I would think he probably is pick 2, but I also know that there are a lot of people who like Drake May. And there are a lot of people who like Jaden Daniels' mobility. So there's the quarterbacks. And then, talking specifically about May, it's interesting watching him play because he does some stuff that just looking at a player on film, he does a lot of drifting where he'll get, he's comfortable in the pocket and it'll just, for some reason, he'll slide 2 or 3 steps left and kind of get into where the tackle and the defensive end are. And then it makes it tougher to throw the ball. And the one thing I'll say about him, and I know I'm lower on May than I think a lot of people are. His lower body is kind of uniquely strange, where he'll pick up his front foot and have to drive it to make throws. And when you force him to reset things, it's almost like the play is dead. You don't have to even get to pressure with him. You just have to force him to reset his feet. And then it's a problem. His release is long. And, he's been kind of talked about as a guy with a big arm, but I don't necessarily, he's got there's more shot put kind of in his release than what you see with a guy like Jaden Daniels, or Caleb Williams has got a great release. And McCarthy, those guys are all solid, but May's got some issues in his mechanics where I could see him having shoulder issues, and he's got some things that he needs to clean up that are like, technical things, but there are some things that he does that are problematic for a player to this point in his career. And the thing with Daniels is he likes to run. When he leaves the pocket, the majority of those times it's a run, and it's not like that's a bad thing necessarily in college. It's okay, but he's a very wiry player. He's a smaller player, and I think if you're running a lot in the NFL and taking contact like he likes to, it's just a matter of time before you get hurt. So I don't know if that explains the first 4, but that's kind of like where the first 4 quarterbacks are. They're all good prospects. They all have pluses and negatives, just like every other quarterback prospect does. It's just interesting, like looking at the class, like the 2021 class that everybody thought was great. Look at it now.
Yeah.
Got to shake your head at it a little bit and wonder.
Yeah. Scott, real quick, you're on a roll, and I didn't want to cut you off. Your camera is completely frozen. So can you hit stop cam at the bottom of the screen?
Yep.
And then turn it back on? Because the people want to see your beautiful face. It's
No,
still
they don't.
frozen.
Look at that. Oh yeah, that's outstanding. No, that's a great picture.
Do you want me to leave and come back in?
Yeah, refresh the page real quick.
All right.
Nick, my buddy Nick out here said, "Who is higher on your board, Daniels or May?" I'm gonna let Scott answer that when he gets back. That's something that I know we talked about a lot. It is interesting to me, Blake, that I'm seeing in particular the Minnesota Vikings on 3 different mock drafts that I looked at today. I'm not joking, 3, and I openly admit this. I am a mock draftaholic. I don't put a lot into them. I really don't. I at least I'm consistent, but I love reading them. But on 3 different mock drafts, I had or I saw, I should say, the Minnesota Vikings moving up, whether it be to 4th, 5th, or even 6th, to go get JJ McCarthy.
Did you see also the news that came out in the gambling world today about JJ McCarthy?
No,
he's the favorite to go number 2 overall.
It all comes back to gambling.
His odds went from plus 2,500 to plus 200 to go number 2 overall.
Oh my goodness!
So now there's a lot of talk that he might go 2.
Dude, Blake, at least we're consistent. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm sorry. I mean, we talked about it back in the last week of January, for goodness sake. I would not be surprised. I think what people thought about JJ McCarthy and what executives thought and the people that count thought were 2 different things. I mean, Michigan fans, Michigan fans, you are one. Of course, you're going to love your guy. But JJ's getting a ton of love. And just to reiterate, because I know Scott is joining us, I mean, I looked at 3 different mocks today that had the Vikings moving up to take JJ McCarthy, whether it be 4, I think the other one was 5, and then the other one was 6. So I'm not sure it necessarily is going to go in that order. There's a lot of speculation that he might go 2, but Nick Mays said, as Scott rejoins us, who do you have higher on your board, Daniels or May? Scott, who do you like better?
Probably Daniels. I would understand both sides of it. To me, there are things that Daniels offers you as a mobile quarterback that May does not. And then there are, like I said, there are issues within May's game that I don't want to say they're fatal at this point, but they're very problematic. The idea that you're bringing pressure upon yourself. It's a clean pocket, and everything's right there for you, and you're going to slide. You're going to slide and make throws much harder. The other thing you're going to do is you're going to be hitting. And if you watch him, you can see it. He's going to be hitting the back and the helmets, maybe of his offensive lineman throwing the ball, because he slides into this pressure, and it's really strange. Like generally, quarterbacks have a good feel for for the pocket and where players are. He does not at all. So there's some of that, and then. Can he make all the throws? Yeah, he can, but he's kind of like a 1-speed thrower. He's almost like a Phillip Rivers kind of thrower, where I don't want to say it's like the shot put as bad as like Phillip Rivers was, but there is a little shot put in his release where he lets the ball get away from his body and outside, kind of outside his frame to the side, and then he brings it back in and then pushes the ball where everybody else is just kind of, the ball comes out the way it should. It's just strange. So his release is strange. His footwork needs some help. And again, to get him out of rhythm, all you have to do is make him reset his feet. With the other quarterbacks, they're totally cool. If they have to do that, they can either escape or, make throws, off platform, sidearm, that kind of stuff, where May can't do that. So I would say Daniels, but there's some danger with Daniels simply because he's so small and so wiry, and he likes contact. He likes to get hit. There's a play against Florida State. It's crazy where it's like a quarterback draw, and he ends up running into the middle where all like the D tackles are, and then he jumps. And it's like, what are you doing? You're 195 pounds, but
do you find it do you find it hard though to like evaluate those guys too? Because like I always think when I think of Jaden Daniels, they schemed guys wide open in that LSU offense, and he had 2 NFL receivers, first round NFL receivers, whereas Drake May, they didn't scheme guys well at all, like at North Carolina, and he didn't have great receivers. So how do you evaluate with those like 2 very different offenses?
It's a great question. The LSU offense is very hard to watch because there's not a lot of structure there, and a lot of what Jaden Daniels does is outside. It's just ad-libbing, right? So, Malik Neighbors is a good player. Brian Thomas is a good player. Yeah, he had good receivers to throw to, but he still made those throws, and he's still effective and a good distributor of the ball. The North Carolina thing is interesting, and there's a little psychology there too. Like if you're Drake May and you pick North Carolina, what does that say? I mean, I don't, it sounds like a little bit of a shot at North Carolina, but it's not like he went somewhere where the expectations are huge, right? It's not like he went to Miami of Florida and resurrected a program. He's in North Carolina. So it's like, I think there's a little Zach Wilson to be learned from a player who might stay in his own little bubble because, maybe he believes he's a great quarterback. And that's the feedback that he gets from that kind of a program. I will tell you,
make a crack about Mac Brown quarterbacks. I mean, it's not like that they've been overrated going into the draft or anything.
Well, it's Mac Brown, so it's like how much does he bears the responsibility for a lot of this? But it's funny, Blake. It's a good point, and it's interesting this year. May was a different guy, and he had a very flat start until Devontae Walker came back. And literally the first play that dude stepped on the field, the offense was better. And it's almost like May needed a player like Walker to open him up. But that's a little bit of a red flaggish kind of a thing to me. Like if you need a player like that, I think he's going to be like a 3rd round pick to open the offense up for you. Otherwise, it's a weird non-functioning offense. I don't think that's a great thing. But again, we're talking about a younger player who's got room to grow, and if we anticipate that he improves and he gets the footwork cleaned up, and he gets some of these other things worked out, he's fine, and he could be a good prospect, a good player. I just don't think he's the dunk, at number 2 that everybody else seems to think he is. But quarterback evaluation is really, really hard. So, I mean, it's a tough thing. It really is. We don't know totally what they're being asked to do. So
it wasn't that long ago, Scott, and I'm sure there are people out there watching this where you and I sat back and I remember vividly and said, am I missing something with Sam Howell? And listen, sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. I think we were right with Sam Howell. I didn't. For 2 years, there was this hype, and I would watch those games. Blake is a big college football fan. Doesn't it seem like North Carolina is on at noon every stinking week on ESPN? Like you turn on ESPN and North Carolina is playing somebody, and I would watch Sam Howell, and I go, there's got to be something I'm missing. There's got to be something I'm missing, and evidently that wasn't the case. Scott Bischoff joining us, Blake, Sean here. Don't forget, want to give a shout out to our friends from the Detroit Sports Commission and Visit Detroit. 30 days out, and they are going hard with Know Before You Go. By all means, make sure you check out all the information available to you at visitdetroit.com. /2024 NFL draft. And you have to get the NFL One Pass for access to some of the places down there. It's free. It's going to make your life very, very easy because while it's going to be a blast and Detroit's going to put on a show, it's going to get very, very hectic as well. Scott, I think that Lion fans are falling into the same trap that they've fallen in so many times and convinced themselves that the Lions are going to take a cornerback in the late 1st round. And I will kindly remind people Brad Holmes don't play that game. Brad Holmes ain't looking at no mock drafts. Brad Holmes doesn't have a list of needs or anything like that. And if you want to question Brad Holmes, you go ahead and be my guest, because I'm not doing it when you look at his draft performance for the last couple of years. But for the sake of an argument, a couple names that you're hearing about, and Blake, you and I talked about these last night. One of them I'm familiar with. The other one, I openly admit I don't know the first thing about him. And let's start with him. TJ Tampa from Iowa State is a name that I've seen in a few places. Fit for the Lions. What do you like about him? How do you break his game down?
I don't know if he's a great fit for the Lions with the man system that the Lions want to run. His first name is Tampa. So, Tampa. He's a fine player. I think there are better options for at the corner position for the things that they like. They love them some gritty corners. They like guys who will come up and tackle, who will be physical.
Yep.
They like versatility. They like players who can play and help them in a variety of ways. He's a fine player. I just think that there are better prospects even available maybe later from where he may go. And I question some of the scheme fit with him in Detroit. So he's a fine player at 29. I would think, maybe if you could have pulled off the much talked about trade down, right? So I mean, you got to get that in there. That'd be fine. Maybe 10 picks later, kind of thing. But it's also nitpick. And you're right. We shouldn't be looking at anything Brad Holmes is doing and criticizing it, because his drafts have been spectacular.
Unbelievable.
You just described Cooper DeJean, I think, like to a T. Like the style of corner that I feel like would fit on the Lions is Cooper DeJean 100%.
Yeah, I mean, he's got all that grit and all that stuff. I think he will end up, him specifically, I think he'll end up as a safety, because he struggles with his hips, and this is not a super fluid player. So if you're asking him to just run in a straight line, good to go. And if you're asking him to break on plays that are happening in front of him, you're good to go. That describes more of a zone corner than a press man, a player who's got to get his hands on a receiver, turn his back to the quarterback, flip his hips, and run with receivers. And that's not necessarily DeJean's game. He's more a player who I think will transition to play safety in the NFL. And as long as he's making plays on stuff that's happening in front of him, I think he'll be a solid player. It's just, don't ask him to change direction much, because I think he's a little stiff doing that. But when you're talking about a guy in a straight line, yeah, I mean he's fast. It's just some limitations in his change of direction abilities.
Before we get too far away from the quarterback conversation we had, there's one other guy I wanted to ask about. Bo Nix. I have a very long-standing disdain for Bo Nix, but I also understand how good he was in college last year, especially. Yeah. Like, do you think he's going to sneak into the bottom half of this first round, or is he going to be more of a second, third round guy?
So, to me, there's a Denver match for Bo Nix, because he's if you think Drew Brees, right, and you see Bo Nix, it's like, yeah, you could kind of mash them together, and they're kind of like a similar type dude. It's interesting with him. There's so many screens that Oregon runs, so it's hard to get like a real great feel. And you know what he looked like at his previous stops. So, I do think if Denver can't find a way to move up and get maybe a quarterback that they covet, there could be a scenario where they would either trade back from 12 or jump back into round 1 and take a player like Nixon. I think that would make sense for what they do and for what he likes, which is the rhythm, tempo, pocket passer. And I think he's great at all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think I could see him being a pick, in the 20s. I could see that being a thing that could happen.
I really hate Bo Nix. There's just I lost a bet on Bo Nix because of Bo Nix one time, and I'll never let it go. So
Well,
there's that.
I'm sorry for
That's fair.
giggling. I'm sorry for giggling. Our mutual friend, we all know him and love him. Bo Nix would just be so perfect for Dave Rieger. That's why I giggled. Dave Rieger deserves Bo Nix. That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh, man.
So I have to ask, because you know how much I love him, other than his disappearing act in the championship game. Michigan might have a little something to do with it.
Yeah.
Scott, what do you think of Michael Penix? Is he, dare I say, a Jalen Hurts type of player that's going to drop to a point and everybody's going to go, why did he drop that far? What are your thoughts on Michael Penix?
So if I knew that he was never going to be pressured or pressured rarely, I would be pretty comfortable with him as a player. I do not. I think the medicals are ugly. Both ACLs have been torn and repaired. He's got I want to say it's a torn labrum in his throwing shoulder. I could have this mixed up, but it's either his throwing shoulder, and then on the other side he's got a sternoclavicular joint injury that's been repaired. So you've got some chest injuries, you got a shoulder injury, you got both knees that have been fixed. This dude is a warrior, but he's a very old body. He's an older prospect. Again, he's statuesque a touch in the pocket. If you know that you have a really good offensive line and you're going to keep him clean, he's as accurate as any quarterback is in this class. He's a really good player. It's just, is it realistic to think that you're going to be able to keep that guy unpressured? Really? Not, he's going to have to deal with pressure. The injuries have piled up. I love the way he throws the ball. Some of it is, we mentioned about LSU's wide receivers. Washington had them too. So, right? Like, they've got 3 in this draft. He's a fine player. I think he'll end up being like a second, third round player. The injuries, I think the NFL are not going to like at all. But just from the way he throws the ball and his accuracy and that kind of stuff, it's pretty. It looks good. Just there's some other stuff that I think you will cause him to fall.
What was Hurts, 53rd, 50 something, right? Wasn't he?
Yeah.
One of you guys fact check me. He was 50 something, right?
Yeah, he was. But he was so effective running the ball that you knew that at least that was going to work, right? That was going to be something that was always going to be there for him. With Penix, it's what is that's always going to be there for him, and it's, to me, it's his ability to layer the ball accurately down the field, but he absolutely must not be pressured, and that's something, an entirely different thing, right?
I know some guys in the chat want to ask Scott some questions, and certainly that's why we have a guy like Scott here. Again, I want to say this. We can't thank our friends with the Detroit Sports Commission and Visit Detroit.com enough. They have sponsored this. They've been great. Thanks to Claude and Marty Doback. And we had Beach now on, and of course our buddy Kurt behind the scenes. Can't thank them enough. This is right in our wheelhouse. All 3 of us love talking this stuff. But again, I want to urge each and every one of you, get the app. Make sure you go to visitdetroit.com 2024 NFL draft. Know before you go, we're 30 days away. Maximize this and make this the best event it can be for you and your friends, your family, whoever you're going down with. This is going to be a blast. Ralph Wiggamson asked, Scott, who do you think might just be the big surprise pick of the first round? And this gives me ample opportunity to tell a new generation of fans, including young Blake. And Scott's going to blush when I say this. About a decade ago, he told anybody that would listen, there was this young man by the name of Ziggy Ansah who was going to go not just in the first round, but he was going to go in, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong. You said the top 10, right? Or was it top 15? I don't remember.
No, I think it was the top 10, but from the Senior Bowl, which is in January, I'm pretty sure I told you the Lions were going to take him.
And he also said the Lions were going to take him. But you know what I remember? I remember so many people killing you when we were doing the show in Grand Rapids. I remember so many people killing you saying he's a 3rd round pick. What are you talking about? He's at best second round pick, et cetera, et cetera. And Scott stuck to his guns. To answer Ralph's question, though, Scott, is there a guy that you're looking at that you think maybe the average fan hasn't picked up on, and you wouldn't be at all surprised if he ends up going in the first round?
To the Lions or just in the first round?
In general. Yeah, just in general.
Oh, boy. That's tough. That's an almost impossible question to answer because Lad McConkey.
Let me try to rephrase it this way. Who did you just say?
Lad McConkey should be a first pick.
Look at Blake and I smiling. We're familiar with his game. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, think about him in Buffalo.
Is there a guy that you like that you think, because I know you're a mock draftaholic as well, you're kind of surprised you're not seeing his name mentioned more often? Would Lad fit that bill?
Lad fits the bill. There is a corner. Let's just do it this way. And if you guys are not cool with it, tell me. I'll do it a different way. If the Lions took Missouri cornerback Chris Abrams-Drain at 29, the average fan would lose their minds. This guy's pants are coming off. That's right. So, I mean, he's a smaller player. He's 5'11". He's 180-ish pounds. He is as sticky a corner as there is in this class. I think he's a player that you could say, you'd love him in round 2, but the Lions have situated themselves into an environment where they don't have tons of needs. There is every expectation that they're going to address, some of the interior offensive line. I guess I do have a couple of names. Kingsley Suamataia from BYU, Sean, of all places.
He loves those more. This is interesting. I have Blake, who's not a fan of the Mormons, and then I got Scott, who loves the Mormons. So
I can't help myself. It's crazy. I just can't help myself. This is so he's like 6'4" and 5'8", 330 pounds. He's got 34 plus inch arms. He played right tackle and left tackle at BYU. He's 21. He's Penei Sewell's cousin, right? So that's the bloodline. And the idea of playing him, say, at left guard for a couple of years with the ability for him to expand out and play tackle in the future is super intriguing to me. He's raw. He needs to develop a little bit.
I didn't know that you could go to BYU and not be 26 and have 2 children.
There he goes. You see, he wants to fight it.
Okay, am I wrong about that though?
You're not.
Apparently, because he's 21, he hasn't done his mission yet. But he is he's an interesting prospect. And this is not a first round player, but there's a dude from South Dakota State. His name is Mason McCormick. He's a guard center combo player. If the Lions took him, say in round 2. Same kind of scenario. Great, just a phenomenal prospect. Smaller school player, but plenty of size. His demeanor screams Lions. He's just like he's a badass, and like he lets you know it. He dominates the competition he plays against. So I mean, he's like these. Those are the 3 that I think are interesting names. But there's a bunch of guys like Xavier Legette, the South Carolina receiver at 29 would stun. I think it would stun people if they took him at 29. But you're talking a bigger bodied player like a little bit Deebo Samuel-ish, where if you get the ball to him, he's a wrecking ball. He's super hard to get to the ground. He's very athletic. He's got really good hands. He can make plays down the field and all that stuff. He's an outside receiver. That's kind of something they're looking for. I think receiver is a position of need for them. Clearly, so is corner, so is edge, and the interior offensive line. I think they need some youth to inject into that room. But I'm trying to think of names that would surprise people in round 1. I don't know. I mean, I think Lad McConkey should be a first round pick, but I think that would surprise some people.
Doug asked, I'm hoping the D lineman from UCLA is available. Is that the edge Latu? I think maybe that's who he's talking about, Scott.
Yeah.
It's a need. I mean, you just discussed that. I mean, no doubt about that. You have to get Aiden some help up front. Would that be a fit as far as you're concerned?
it would be a great fit. I think he will be gone. The only chance you have there is that injuries caused him to medically retire a few years ago. And a little bit like Jalen Phillips, where, he had to transfer away from UCLA to be able to play, went to Miami, and then became a late first-round pick. Latu's a really good player. He's got incredible hand usage. He's very agile. He's big enough. He's got great movement abilities. He's not a super physical player, so this is not a player you're going to say, get out there and defend the run and set a firm, an edge and, go kick that tackle's ass and make a tackle. That's not necessarily his game, but he's going to get you pressures. He is a quick speed rusher with good size. If he's the pick at 29, it's a little bit. The Lions have benefited from like I said this a couple days ago. The Red Wings got pounded for years in the draft lottery, and they just did, right? The Lions have kind of gone the opposite of that, where in the draft the last couple of years things have fallen to them. Like think about Penei Sewell falling to you at pick 7. Like
Scott, my jaw dropped. I was with you. We were doing a show with Joik Bell that night, Blake, and it was funny. If I remember, help me out here, Scott. I used to have a really sharp memory, but I'm old now. Joik kind of heard from a friend that Cincinnati was going to go wide receiver, and I remember you and I sitting back going, "No, they aren't. They're going to protect Joe Burrow. They're right."
I thought they would take Chase the entire time. I thought. I think that
really?
was
okay.
Yeah,
all right.
It was more It was more Waddle.
Okay.
It was Waddle going to go in front of to Miami, and were they really going to allow a player like Penei Sewell to fall simply because he took the year off, right? Like, but I mean, he falls to them, and then Hutchinson falls to them 2 years ago. I know he fell one spot, but over Trayvon Walker, that seems to be. We'll see in the future, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is that it wouldn't surprise me if somebody falls to them who we look at as a screaming value, because the way Holmes has set this up, there's no position that's off limits for them. They're going to take the best available player who fits what they do. That's what they're going to do.
Accept it and move on.
Yeah. How do you rank these receivers? Like, what's your receiver tier list?
So it starts with the number 1, then there's a 2, and then there's a 3.
Are you a Marvin Harrison? Are you
rank
Marvin
them by
Harrison's
number.
the number 1, like without a doubt, hands down, bar none? Because I'm a Rome Odunze guy through and through.
So I would.
Do you like him better than Harrison?
Yeah.
Is that your Michigan fandom? Come on, be honest.
No.
Okay.
I think those two are very close. I really do. And I could see an argument for Odunze over Harrison in some ways. I could see it. I think they're similar guys. They're not going to take the top off the defense. They're not crazy fast players, but they're just players who get it done. And with the ball in the air, it's really good at the catch point. So for me, it's Odunze and Harrison at the top in some order, whatever order you want it to be in. I think Harrison's a pretty polished player, though. Odunze is really good, and then I think there's a little tier, and then there's Neighbors. A lot of people want to kind of push Neighbors into he's this year's Jamar Chase, and I don't know. Like we talked about the LSU offense earlier. There's not a lot of opportunities where you get to see him just torch somebody in his route running. It's more kind of creating outside structure stuff, but he's fast. I don't know that he's as fast as everybody thinks, though. And I'll say this, that if he was a 4.3 speed guy, I think you run at the combine to prove that, to put yourself in wide receiver 1 area. And the fact that he didn't, and then with how he looked, because they're on film, he'll release, and let's say he takes an outside release. A lot of the time, the corners stay with him, so he's not running away from people like super fast receivers do. So I would rank them. I would think it'd be Harrison 1, Odunze 2, and then Neighbors 3, and then there's a huge gap you know, and then there's a bunch of guys like who's wide receiver 4. There could be any of 4 or 5 names there that would make some sense. Brian Thomas might be in there. I mean, there's a bunch of names. It's gonna be interesting though, because I think you're looking at potentially 7 or 8 offensive linemen, maybe 6 or 7 offensive linemen in the first round. I would say potentially like 15 offensive linemen in the first 2 rounds. I would think. I mean, yeah, with the tackles and the interior guys, there's a bunch of wide receivers. So that's kind of where the meat of this draft is. Then you got, you have the 4 or 5 quarterbacks. There's a few edge players in there. The tackle class, the O-line class is huge. And then the wide receiver class, that second group is going to be really interesting how they come off the board. It's going to be interesting.
Couple questions from Nick. First, let's get this out of the way. Tony Robinson said, who is this year's Ronnie Brown? Tony, are you going to finish that? That would be my response to Tony.
Jalen Wright.
Nick Mays asked about Max Melton. That is a name that has come up from Rutgers. Kool-Aid McKinstry's name. I mean, you knew that was going to come up. Just the mere fact it's called Kool-Aid. And Nick has a second question about wide receivers that Blake, you and I talked about last night. It's kind of funny. I'm going to be intrigued to hear Scott's thoughts, but Max Melton and Kool-Aid McKinstry, Scott.
So they both fit. Melton, I would think, is a round 2, round 3 player who's going to come in and give you competition and some youth and some playmaking, but I don't think that's a player who necessarily helps in year 1. But the way they're set up, you don't absolutely have to have that. He's a good player. I would say early round 3 for him is where late round 2, early round 3. He's a good player. Kool-Aid.
Cool name.
It's a fascinating thing that's happened to him. So he got outplayed this year by Terrion Arnold, who's going to go early. He's going to be a top 15, top 20 pick. And obviously, the Lions love Alabama players. They run the man system where they're physical in coverage. I would want to see Kool-Aid be a little more physical. Like there are times when he allows receivers to get into their routes when he should not, or it's easier than it should be for them to do that. So you need to get him a little more physical and a little more feisty. I like the idea
that doesn't fit the Lions, right?
It doesn't necessarily, but there's a lot of cornerbacks that you would say just based on college film don't necessarily fit the Lions because
sure.
In the college game, there's not a lot of physical press that's happening.
Yeah.
There's a lot of zone. There's a lot of gimmicky stuff on defense. But Alabama does it. So you can see Kool-Aid doing it, right? You can see him walk up and get his hands on receivers. It's just he's not as physical as I think they would prefer. That doesn't mean he's bad. And it doesn't mean he's not a fit. He is. The question is, with that Jones fracture, I don't know what they're gonna feel as far as with the foot surgery and with what's coming. I don't think he ran an official 4.52, and I think that's what his speed is. I think people are going to want to give him a little benefit of the doubt, but the function of that injury, I don't think is something that takes away from your 40 time. I think it's something that would bother you if you're changing directions and doing shuttle stuff. That's more problematic for what that injury is. But his 40 time he's a 4.5 guy. I think he's plenty fast enough, plenty big enough. There are just moments where you want him to be more physical. That doesn't mean he's not a fit. He's a good fit. It's just, is he a player that might slip to you a little bit and you may get fortunate and say round 2 with him when I think he was looked at all year as a first round corner.
I'm telling you, Scott, I will say it. And I know you're probably tired of you can get guys in the 2nd and 3rd, 4th round at that position. These people that are just so insistent that you have to use that first round pick on a corner. I'm sorry. Folks, I have no other way to say it. I couldn't disagree more. I'll look at my aunt chiming in. Wings up 2-1 after 2. Big game.
I
against
like it.
Tonight. I still, Alex Ovechkin, it was like the Undertaker. He came back to life. It's unbelievable. He's scoring goals again. Here's the second part, and we were talking about this last night, Blake. As a matter of fact, you brought this up when we were having this conversation. No doubt about it, Scott, you touched on it earlier. The Lions do need a wide receiver, contrary to what people may think. And I think they need a particular type of wide receiver. Nick said for the X receiver, would a guy like Polk fit that? What about Keon Coleman? Does Holmes want MSU Galladay? And you know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Blake, but you brought up in a perfect world, if the price was right, and this guy, you know, didn't throw at his back every time he sneezed, a guy like Mike Williams would have been perfect here for the Detroit Lions.
It's funny, MSU Galladay, because man, that is who Keon Coleman is. I do not think Jared Goff is going to give Kenny Galladay clone opportunities to make plays with the ball in the air. That's just not what he does. So, I mean, if you're taking Keon Coleman, you're banking on his ability to win with the ball in the air, down the field, on the boundary, and I don't think that's a match for their quarterback. It's just not. I could be wrong with that, but you know, I think he tests the way he tested. He had to get away from Michigan State to produce. He was good at Florida State. He was really good. It's just, what are the limitations in his game?
That Labor Day game.
That was great.
Shut up your mouth.
I texted Sean instantly during that game. I said, man, if MSU just had a receiver like this, they'd be a real good team.
Is that a window into his soul? If that isn't a window into his soul, I don't know what is.
That is, that's dark. It's also very funny. I love it. Yes, I don't know that he is a good fit. I think when you look at receivers specific for Goff, they need to be really reliable route runners. They need to be exactly where they're supposed to be. Goff does not like to put the ball into dangerous places. If you just think about Stafford and the things that Stafford did for Galladay, that was all about putting the ball into a position so Galladay could go up and make plays, and that's just not Goff's game. Goff is more, I would look at, like, Ladd McConkey be a perfect fit for Jared Goff. Ricky Pearsall, Roman Wilson, the really effective, efficient route runners who are athletic enough to do everything that you could want, but you trust and rely. I mean, you saw it with Laporta last year. Laporta is a very reliable, trustworthy route runner, and look what happens. You see it with Amon-Ra, right? He's exactly where he's supposed to be. That's why Goff trusts him. So, who was the first? This is talking about bad memories. Who's the first guy you mentioned?
Polk.
Yeah, I mean, if you're taking Jalen Polk in round 3 or 4, that's not a losing bet, right? It's just, you know, again, they have to match and fit with what Goff does. The only thing I'll say here is that Brad Holmes has tried this prototype multiple times. Think Tyrell Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Tall, wiry, fast.
Yep.
Brashad Perriman. Tall, wiry, fast. He did it with Josh Reynolds. Same kind of thing. So if you're not re-signing Reynolds, or even if you are, it almost seems like that's the prototype, and that's what they're looking for in their boundary X receiver. A taller, thinner, fast player. There are a few guys in this class that would profile there. Brian Thomas is one of them. But, you know, is Thomas a good enough route runner to be a fit like that? Maybe I'm making something of nothing talking about the receivers they've tried. And Denzel Mims is another one they tried last year.
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of thing. A faster guy, taller, linear. So I'm kind of thinking in terms of, is that what they're looking for? A taller, linear, fast guy. My hope is that if they're taking a receiver, that it's not. My hope is that it is a dynamic route runner who can then do things after the catch, because it takes the offense from a pretty electric, potent offense to kind of, hey, we're going to beat you today. You choose how we want to do it, right? Like there are a million ways we can beat you. If you take away this part, we'll beat you over here. We also have Gibbs and Montgomery. You know, I mean, they've done some really good things to put themselves in a good position, but I wonder about what it is that they're looking for out of the receiver position.
250 people currently watching. We appreciate each and every one of you.
Awesome.
We've had great numbers tonight. Tell your friends about it. Like us on YouTube, all that stuff. Blake, I want to give you the final word in just a second, and certainly cordially invite Scott to come back with us in the next few weeks leading up. But I want to remind everybody about our friends at Detroit Sports Commission and Visit Detroit. 30 days into the draft, know before you go. Go to visitdetroit.com/2024 NFL draft. Get the NFL app for your phone as well. The pass is an absolute must. You have to have it. There's no doubt about that. Make this as fun and easy on you as humanly possible. Mike Williams loves Xbox candy. Wait, my bad. Flashbacks got
Pringles, baby.
Cheetos. He had orange Cheetos all over every one of his Lions jerseys. The other Mike Williams, the fat Mike Williams. But Blake, we're going to give you the last word.
Scott, how many Michigan players get drafted?
Of course he's going there. Of course he's going there.
14. I don't know. I have no idea.
I just want them to break the record, and I think they have a chance.
What is the record?
I think it's 18. I think is the number of players drafted.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
they have some studs, and like Mike Sainris still. I know he's undersized, but if that's a guy you take in round 2, I think you're very happy because you're getting one of the best football players there is. He's,
ball hawk. I mean, he's just one of those guys. He just always seems to be around the ball.
He's the best tackling like DB in this draft.
Visit Detroit.com. Visit Detroit.com/2024 NFL draft. Make sure you get the NFL One Pass app. Know before you go. Scott, you want to do this again sometime in the next 30 days before the draft?
What are you guys doing tomorrow? Yeah, of course I want to do it again. I love it. Great.
We're going to catch up with Matthew Dandino tomorrow on What the Puck.
Oh, dandy.
So we'll see you in the chat for sure, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been there a couple of times, but yeah, I'd love to come on. Whenever I will I'll just tell you this. You give me 5 minutes heads up and I'm available. I'm serious. I would love to come on. This is nostalgic for me because I love talking to you, Sean, and Blake. Good stuff. I'd love to come back on.
Didn't I? I didn't seriously. I told you Blake's mean, and he didn't let us down today, right?
He did not disappoint. It's been spectacular. It's great.
I'm mean to Sean. I'm not mean to you, Scott. I don't
understand why. I've been nothing but nice to this guy. I give him food. I let him into my house. Anthony said Scout should be on all the time. I'd love to have that. But hey, thank you for checking us out. Blake, always a pleasure. Scott, definitely we're going to have you back. Todd, thanks for what you do. Most importantly, thank you. Tell your friends about this. Like us on YouTube. Blake, what else?
Subscribe to us on YouTube. You keep saying
good.
Like.
Okay.
And that's great if they would like to like the video as well. Yeah. But subscribe.
Keep this thing going. Great.
Subscribe. And on the podcast platforms, rate us. Tell us how good or bad we're doing. Probably bad for Sean, good for Blake.
You see what I'm talking about? It's never ending. Listen, I can't think
our friends. Help.
I can't thank our friends with the Detroit Sports Commission and Visit Detroit enough. Visit Detroit.com/2024 NFL draft. Know before you go. Get the NFL One Pass. Until tomorrow night, for Scott and Blake, we'll see you.
Off the Air with Sean Baligian, featuring Sean Baligian and Blake Majchrzak. Produced by Todd Losey and Blake Majchrzak. Executive produced by Sean Baligian and Todd Losey. Theme song, incidental music, and related sound effects are from Play It Loud by Jam Studio. Engineering, mixing, and graphic design support provided by the Unsyndicated podcast team. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Off the Air with Sean Baligian on all your favorite channels. While you're there, be sure to rate and review the podcast. Got something to say to Sean? Call the Unsyndicated hotline at 248-237-3257.